Yeah.
Yes.
How are you?
All right. Well, at the risk of it, we could go all over the map from the presidential race down to the local races, but I just want to start with one comment I've been thinking about is we've known for a long time, since 2 years ago, in particular the last year, that the county supervisor races would be extremely hot indeed. I'm not going to just recite results because you all know them more than probably 99% of the people in this county. But I've been joking to a lot of people, and I told the table over here just before we started that I would have said for the last year, did say many times, many people, that the top three issues were probably housing, housing, and housing. Maybe if there was a fourth, it was pensions. When the results came in, I realized perhaps I was not correct. Perhaps there was a lot of other issues. Perhaps housing is not as hot an issue this year as it was 2 years ago when a race for an incumbent supervisor that was expected to be close, Susan Adams, turned out to be a landslide for the challenger, and a race that was expected to be won by a supervisor handily, Judy Arnold, was in fact a very, very narrow victory, a couple hundred votes I think, wasn't it? 215. 215. And so this year I thought would be more of the same, but apparently not. And I'm not quite sure why that is. There's an article in the IJ this morning, Dick was quoted in it. Just the temperature was not as hot. There wasn't as much as anti-incumbent fervor as there usually is. It comes and goes in waves. I thought it was particularly hot this year, especially with a target of the Board of Supervisors, but not so much. Dick?
Well, I think you're right. I didn't think it was housing, frankly, because I live in Mill Valley. I thought it was traffic. And so that's not to be ignored. Something else, though. 2 years ago, when David Conley landslide against Susan Adams and Judy Arnold had the scare of her life, I think the Board of Supervisors got the message to a certain extent. You're going to see right now on housing that you don't see a lot of big-time housing proposals out there that are inflaming the public, with the one exception, Strawberry. And that's not so much housing, that's about Branson School, which is a private school. The Board of Supervisors adopted a proposal to the eternal frustration of the left, which has been to emphasize retention of existing housing and to put housing in more sensitive locations in a more balanced fashion. Not that I've been advocating this for a couple of years, but I think they started to do that, and that's taken away some of the tension. It's due to, I said, Katie Rice, I think she somehow, about 2 years ago, developed political instinct. I'm not sure, Susan's opponent, but yeah. County Health, Judy Arnold certainly had the paradigm, and so that's been a difference, which has taken the folks, the passion out of it.
Good point. So a little bit of a surprise that both Kate Sears and Katie Rice won by comfortable margins, not landslide, but it wasn't exactly a squeaker either, especially Katie Rice, who everybody thought would be in a runoff because she wouldn't be able to get over 50% against two well-known, well-financed elected official incumbents. It certainly wasn't the 68 or 72 or whatever she got 4 years ago under similar circumstances when housing hadn't risen to such an issue. But she did win. They both won comfortably with margins in their 50s and avoided a runoff. In the case of Kate Sears and Susan, it was foregone conclusion because there was only two candidates. Let me jump to the judges' races, if I may. It was a mystery to many people because most people didn't know most of the candidates, don't follow most of this stuff. And judges' races are very different from all other races from President of the United States to sanitary districts and everywhere in between because they can't give any positions on any issues. If they're athletes, say the canon of judicial ethics, which governs all judges and all candidates for judge, prevent me from giving an opinion on any issue which might come before me, which is virtually everything, so they can't give any issues, any opinions. So what do? They can't say, well, this is why my background, this is why I'm running, this is why you should vote for me, this is why I want to become a judge. Not very enlightening for many voters that want to know their positions on the issues, especially for a bunch of unknown people, which they mostly were to most of the people. Now, Dick and I are both attorneys, so we follow this a little more carefully than some, and I did attend some of the candidates forums, and in fact, I was the program chair for the County Bar Association, and we put on a big one. And 9 candidates is a lot. It came out about as I expected. Sheila Lichtblau, I figured would be in the top 1 or 2. Mike Cofino, I knew was a strong candidate with 20% of the vote each, depending on how you count. It looks like they will be in the runoff in fall. There were some other fairly strong candidates and some no-chance candidates, so you had to scratch your head and wonder why they were running and what they were thinking. Dick?
Well, frankly, I missed all the candidates nights and the IJ when they came to the IJ because I was traveling far off lands. And so I often tell folks, if you don't know any of the candidates, don't vote. I mean, that's a good idea. So many people just say, oh, I like that ballot designation. Well, that's a bad idea. I happen to have known one of the candidates through the Bar Association, which won my vote, but I could not give you a rundown on other people other than the ballot endorsements. I will say that one thing's a surprise, unless I'm wrong, none of them are prosecutors.
In the three former
In the
prosecutors
runoff.
of the nine. Yeah, no, in the runoff, it's a county counsel, Sheila Lichtblau, and a public defender, Mike Cofino. Mike Cofino had a very compelling narrative. He says in every county in the Bay Area, there is at least one judge on the bench that's a former public defender, but not Marin, since Dick Briner retired. So that was an interesting narrative, and plus he's a very intelligent, articulate, thoughtful, well-respected guy. But here's my prediction. It's going to be Sheila Lichtblau, even though in the end Mike Cofino edged her out, but half a point doesn't really matter because it's a whole different electorate in fall. But look at all the other candidates that lost, 7 of them. And 3 of them are former prosecutors. I just don't see them supporting, or their supporters, supporting a public defender. And plus, several of them are women. And I think they may want to see another woman on the bench, particularly a woman whose mother and father were Indian and Puerto Rican. It provides a little more diversity to the bench. So those are reasons why I think most, if not all, of the other candidates and their supporters will go for Sheila Lichtblau rather than Mike Cofino, who's a fine fellow and would make a good judge.
Sheila Lichtblau has one element of diversity that I really care about, not the ones you referred to. And one of the other candidates in the race used my name a lot. Somebody said, gee, this sponsor, are you endorsing? I think it was Beth Jordan.
Beth Jordan.
Beth Jordan, who I've never met in my life. But she does read the Independent Journal, and you're allowed to clip it. I was calling for diversity because in my 42 years of practicing law, I've been a civil lawyer. Most of the cases are civil, and the diversity I was speaking about, what Sheila Lichtblau has, is the civil side of the law. And so when I go to court for my clients, I don't care if they're the plaintiff or the defendant's lawyers, I want somebody that understands the practice. And criminal men and women, fine folks that they may be, PD, DEA, doesn't matter, rarely have any experience on the civil side. So I like to see some judges with diversity of civil versus criminal. And that's the Sheila Lichtblau plus for me.
I agree. Oh, by the way, let me go back to the other supervisor's race we skipped. We talked about the 2 incumbents. The 4th district, with Steve Kinsey retiring after 20 years, also drew a large field, 8 candidates, and kind of like the judges' race, there were a few very fine, very intelligent, very thoughtful, well-financed, good candidates, and a few that make you scratch your head and say, what were they thinking running with no chance? But I talked, I think it was here, or something, a month or 2 ago, to Gary Giacomini, and although we supported different candidates, he and I both agreed on who the top 3 would be. In fact, the only ones with a chance of winning, because they're the only ones who were well enough financed, to send out the requisite number of mailers. And they were indeed the top 3, but neither of us knew which order they would come in. But we shouldn't be surprised that Dennis Rodoni, even though he started a little later in January than some of them, he's the only one that's an elected official, 20 years in the North Marin Water District, sort of a mainstream environmentalist, supported by the Sierra Club, lots and lots and lots of supporters, particularly in West Marin, his Point Reyes Station, a contractor, came in first by considerable margin, followed again, not surprisingly, by Dominic Grossi, who was supported by Gary Giacomini, and a lot of other people, although I was a little surprised. I didn't really know him, I hadn't heard of him. He's been involved in a number of boards, but many of you maybe didn't know him. But he's a rancher, that counts for something, and so he will be the other person in the runoff. Wendy Kellens came in 3rd, which surprised some of us, maybe not others, and the others were way far down. Dick?
Well, what we ended up with was these 2 politically moderate West Marin ranchers. Wendy, who was backed by the left, Al Duggan, who was backed by the anti-development forces and pension reformers, both out. I thought those were the 4, personally. I thought that I saw as 3 as the strongest. A lot of people predicted 2 politically moderate West Marin ranchers, kind of for a modified status quo. Things are okay, but we could do a little bit better here, there, and everywhere. The West Marin rancher community, which is very small in population,
right?
Corte Madera dwarfs them, is a little bit divided, as you know. You may know. Dennis Rodoni was an anti-oyster guy, and the ranchers feel that that's a opening the door for anti-cows. Dennis says that's not true. That's not true. But that's a big deal in West Marin. I mean, it is an emotional deal in West Marin. So that's to be warned. I want to say something about the presidential race, if I could, in Marin County. When the first results came in, we do this on Channel 22 at night, and the results are just coming in as we go on the air for Marin. I had figured it was neck and neck with Bernie. That's just how I figured it. And there's a real mistake in political punditry, maybe in politics as well, to listen to the loudest voices. In politics, you do that. I had breakfast with the mayor of San Rafael this morning, and we were talking about people in the auditorium versus the people in the city, playing to the chamber, or relying on the chamber. That's a mistake, because an awful lot of people don't go to meetings. And in politics, a lot of folks are activists, but statistically, not that many. And so that makes some of us hear the wrong sound. And so Hillary Clinton did not give Bernie Sanders did not give Hillary Clinton a real race in this county. Hillary Clinton convincingly, double digits, won Marin County, despite everything. I was surprised by that.
And the state, by 7 March.
Yeah, and it's not, it wasn't close. I can tell you, I followed the 2nd Congressional District. Sonoma was closer, mainly because that portion of Sonoma in the district was closer. The county as a whole was not as close. Just tells you that different people, different geographical areas vote differently. Mendocino, Humboldt County, and Trinity, and Layton, trying to get the 2nd District right, were Bernie areas. And Bernie did very well, particularly well in Humboldt County, and Hillary did particularly well in Marin County. But once again, we talk about Marin County, and I didn't see that coming down the pike.
Neither did I, and the reason is Bernie, throughout this campaign, all the states, tends to come out strong at the last minute with all the volunteers flooding in and working like crazy and overcoming huge deficits in the polls, but not always. And this is one of those that didn't happen. Now, how much of that was because Hillary had pretty much clinched it? Some Bernie supporters were furious that on Monday of this week, the day before the election, the AP in one of the districts announced that Hillary clinched it because she got a few more uncommitted superdelegates, and people thought that was a conspiracy theory. I don't, because after all, Hillary had been working on those people for a year, so had Bernie, and she'd gotten 90% of them, and what few undecided still remained, she got, and she probably said, look, if you're going to announce it, please do it before the California primary, and they did, and went over the top.
Well, I listened to the radio this morning in the Times and Politico.com, and some of the folks on the Bernie side are saying that I can determine the answer if that was the factor or not in a second.
Yeah.
I can probably do it on my iPhone.
1 minute final comment.
I can do it on my iPhone because the people that voted by mail weren't affected by what happened on Monday. I mean, it's by definition. And in fact, Hillary easily won those votes. So it had nothing to do with the outcome. But when you lose an election, there's always a I lost an election once. There must be a conspiracy. Somebody's got to be against it. But I do know when I won 3 times. When I won, it was the voice of the people.
One last comment about that too is the reason I thought Bernie would do better here in Marin was that we in this congressional district had the largest turnout at the caucus a month ago to select the delegates to the National Convention. I know because I chaired that caucus for Bernie, and that will come as no surprise to many of you, and certainly those of you that are not fans of Hillary will say, right on. Those of you that are fans of Hillary will say, Greg, what's wrong with you? But anyway, I like Bernie. He had the right message at the right time, and we had 600 people in Marin Community Center, another 300 in Eureka, connected electronically. It's the largest turnout of any caucus. So I thought Bernie would do well in this area. I was surprised that it wasn't close.
I must say that I try to stay neutral in these races, but I have to be a little careful because the person sleeping in the next bed to me feels very passionate about one of the candidates, and she wasn't feeling the burn.
I hear it. Well, thank you all very much.